Welcome to our open mic number 3.
I didn't think it was going to be this big.
As you may or may not know, Jeffrey is a licensed bartender.
Whoa!
So today he's going to teach us how to mix drinks. Thank you.
Cool. Good evening, all. My name is Jeffrey Borromeo, your resident bartender. Let's keep the clock to a minimum. We are starting at 9:40. Hopefully, I get through all of this in a reasonable amount of time. Jackie, this is my clicker over here. The cue is next slide, please. Okay, thanks. So a little background on me. Graduated from Wash 2014. Graduated at a lesser-known CSU at 2017. Now I attend bar while I wait for law school. So, I'm a bar lead at Fogo de Chão, right across from the Moscone Center on 3rd and Howard. I'm like second in charge of like the beverage program over there, whether it's ordering drinks, figuring out what customers want. Just pretty much taking care of inventory worth like $100,000. So I'm pretty. I know my stuff. I'd like to think I know my stuff. In terms of wine, that's like the least amount I know when it comes to wine. Level 1 sommelier, but like that's better than most. I like to think. Anyways, this alcohol is from my home. I brought some of them. If you guys see Instagram, it's pretty ridiculous.
Yes.
I'm actually regretting it. But oh well. Sometimes I just open it up and take a look at it. I don't even drink very often. Anyways, let's start off with tequila and vodka. Tequila and vodka are the two easily most popular ordered spirits in the United States. Ignore the date. Next slide, please. Click it, dude. So, what'd you do? Okay. So,
Come on.
there's a back thing, back option.
Yeah. Okay, either way is fine.
Have you done this before?
Minus.
Okay, so in terms of tequila can only be made in Mexico. It's made any other country and you can't call it tequila. The states highlighted in red are the only states that produce tequila. All the other states ignore. Mezcal is a big thing, especially here in San Francisco. If you cared to figure out where mezcal is from, look at the states in the green. Jalisco is the easiest high volume producing tequila state in Mexico. Fun fact, if you buy a bottle of tequila, you're gonna have to, let's pass this around. Don't swig. So on the back of the label, what you want to look for is a small thing that says CRT. And CRT, look for CRT. Pass this around. Don't drink it. So CRT on the back of the label can only be given by the Mexican government approving and saying that it's actually tequila and it follows all the standards. So when it comes to tequila and what you can call it, Mexico is the strictest when it comes to that. So whenever you buy a bottle of tequila, always look for something called CRT, yes.
What does CRT stand for?
Certified, regulated, and fair traded or something like that from the Mexican government. I'm probably wrong, but it's something along those lines. So the two bottles that I'm passing around right now are a Blanco tequila and an Añejo tequila. Blanco tequila is probably most popular. You can drink it with, most people drink it like as a shot with salt on the rim and a lime. That's actually not the case for Mexico. That's a big American thing. So that was never started in Mexico. The salt and the lime is just an American thing, but I guess it's taken on so far. Tequila Blanco, which is the Casamigos that we have passing around, is pretty much the same color as that. However, that aged 2.5 years in oak barrels. I'll talk about that more when I get into it. But yeah, look at the states. The taste of tequila and the quality of tequila really depends on what state it's from.
No. It says CRT.
Look at the clarity
depends on what state it's from, whether it's like whether the agave plants are produced in like the high mountains or the low mountains. The time of year it's harvested, it really depends on the taste of tequila. So if you're drinking tequila and you don't like it, chances are you're probably getting a terrible tequila. Does anyone here drink gold tequila? No? No one buys good. I'll explain why. Next slide, please.
What does the number mean on the CRT?
The number on the CRT is like the license number given from the government to the distributor or the distiller. So Casamigos has that certain license number for that certain batch of silver. I'll get into it. So anyways, if you guys didn't know, agave plants is what make up tequila. To be deemed a tequila, especially by the government of Mexico, it has to be made with at least 51% agave. The rest of it, 49%, you can add, anything from caramel to sugar, and that's the stuff that gives you a headache. So if you get Jose Cuervo Gold or all that garbage, it's not really that good for you. What you want to do is look for a tequila that has like 100% blue agave. All the tequila that I have at my home bar is 100% blue agave. I don't carry any of the gold because it's cheap, but like it's not really good for you. And it gives you a terrible headache. Next slide, please.
So you can't find that anywhere else besides Mexico?
Tequila can only be produced in Mexico because that's just how it is. Kind of like how Scotch, if you buy a Scotch can only be produced in Scotland. Bourbon can only be produced in the United States. I'll go over that in a little bit. Let's just get through this. No, I didn't say that yet. So, as you saw wait, hold up, go back one slide. Okay, so the agave plants grow up to be pretty big. It takes a while to make these. They grow anywhere between, they grow anywhere to be about 8 to 10 years old. Normally they're harvested at 8 years old, 10 years old. Depends on what region of Mexico it is. Again, highlands, lowlands of Mexico. High mountains produce not so great quality of agave, which is why they harvest it at 10 years. And they grow up to be like that. Next slide, please. So those little center things that look like pineapples, can you guess what they're called? No, well, other than agave, that actual, I guess, pineapple-looking thing is actually called a piña. Yeah. They cook it in steam ovens. Traditional distilleries use conclaves, so they cook it for like a super long time, extract all the sugars, and then they add yeast on top of it. They let it ferment, and they keep it at a hot temperature for anywhere between 1 to 3 days, normally at 33 degrees Celsius. That way the yeast can, I guess, poop. If you guys know how yeast works. I can get really nerdy into this, but I'm not going to. After that, they're put into either copper stills, columns, or stainless steel columns or stills. And to do that, because they need to boil out methanol and ethanol. Any chem majors in here? Anybody that knows what the hell methanol is? Methanol is actually dangerous for you and can kill you if you consume enough. Methanol burns at a lower boiling rate than ethanol. So what they want to do, what most distillers do, and this is how all alcohol is made, they boil out and they cook it. They cook the, I guess, solution at a really high temperature so that the methanol burns out, but there's still a good amount of ethanol. So chances are that burn is from the ethanol. Hopefully not the methanol. Again, I could get very nerdy into this. If you guys are confused, that's totally okay. Hit me up with questions afterwards. Is this Next slide, please. After that, it's ready. After all the distillation is finished and you cook out all the methanol, you have Blanco tequila. Blanco tequila, the most popular ones easily are Patron and Don Julio. I don't care much for Patron. I don't care for much Don Julio, which is why, where the hell did my bottle go? This is my bottle of Blanco tequila that I keep at home. And as you can see, the colors are very different, and I'll explain why in a little bit. This is all tequila. If you let this age in a barrel for just as long as this, it'll end up looking like this. Same with this guy. Next slide. Oh, actually, no. To be considered a Blanco tequila, it can't be rested for any more than 3 months. Otherwise, it ends up taking a color like this. Next slide, please. Reposado tequila. Reposado means rested in Spanish. I lost my train of thought. Reposado is, in my opinion, better for like mixed drinks, I guess. I think of Blanco as something for shots. Reposado, there'll be some notes of caramel and a little sweeter than I guess this guy over here. Blanco tequila is easily the most raw vegetal state of agave. It's gonna burn a lot, and the ethanol in that is pretty potent. When you rest it long enough, anywhere between 3 to 11 months and 29 days, so right before the 2-year mark or 1-year mark, you can consider it a reposado, and it's much softer on the palate. Is there anyone that would like to do a tasting right now? Can someone help me with cups?
Oh, wait,
I have shot glasses at home.
Let me check. We might have disposable.
How many people? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Yeah. The small tasting.
Tasting, not doing shots.
You can give me that.
I don't think that's how it works there.
Hands up again, please. Sorry.
Slowly getting more.
There goes this whole bottle.
Hey, thanks for having me do this. I don't drink this very often, so you guys are actually helping me get rid of stuff.
Do you need help?
Should we do this more often?
I don't know about more often. I don't want to condone alcoholism. I do condone a good time.
So which one is the more sweeter one?
I'll pass it around. So I'll pass both of them around, and I'll wait for till everyone has it. The sweeter one is gonna be the reposado though, because it's rested in oak barrels. And fun fact, color from this and color from this, same thing with whiskey. All of it is from oak barrels. There's no sugar added. There's no caramel added. As long as it's rested, it'll naturally take on the color of whatever barrel it was in. Most of the time, it's oak barrels.
From wood?
Yeah.
From wood, yes, wood.
Can I ask a question now?
Yes.
Are they all?
That was your question.
Are they all the same? They
Um,
just store it differently?
For the most part, yes, they're all brewed the same. If you were listening to my program.
I was. Sure.
Blanco tequila, once it's finished with the distillery process, you can bottle it as long as it's no more than 3 months rested in an oak barrel. Shoot, I could make tequila right now, assuming I had all the stuff. I could bottle it and it would be, I don't want to say it's just as good as this, but it would be considered a Blanco tequila. However, you take the same product and all you do is age it for about 3 months or so. You get something like this. 3 months to, oh, I'm about to sneeze. Okay.
Is the darker one more expensive?
The darker one is more expensive. The reason being is because the people who take the time to make this, they also have to monitor the aging process. They have to make sure whatever they keep it in isn't too hot, isn't too cold. The warehouse doesn't set on fire. If you guys heard of the Jim Beam incident,
Can you please describe the incident?
Yes, please.
Not that we don't know.
I've never heard of it.
Blew up.
Yeah,
It
long
blew
story
up.
short,
Why?
They were also like.
they weren't monitoring.
If you're monitoring it, why did it blow up?
They weren't.
Oh, I thought you said were.
How long do they boil it for to burn the methanol?
anywhere between 1 to 3 days. It's kept at a really high temperature.
4 to 3 days?
1 to 3 days.
Do you think you have the
33 degrees Celsius to 38 degrees Celsius.
Nothing in this.
Nothing in the
Hold on, don't drink it yet, please. I want you guys to like have a side-by-side comparison.
Don't drink it yet, he says.
Actually, do whatever the hell you want, but I'd rather you not drink it.
Do whatever the hell you want.
Wait, Jeffrey, have you been to Mexico?
Thank you.
After being
wait, hold on.
like having your license?
I've been to Mexico, but I haven't visited like distilleries or anything.
Anybody else?
You look crazy over
You don't let me try?
I don't really know.
Okay. No, just taste it. It's like drink, just taste it.
I'm pretty allergic.
Okay.
So, fun fact while I figure this out and how to pass out the second one so you guys can have it side by side. Tequila is actually really good for a cold.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one now.
Wait,
So-
why is it good
I
for
thought it was
cold?
whiskey.
Because it's alcoholic.
The agave plant itself is pretty medicinal in its purposes. I know, like I have a bunch of like Mexican friends that say like when they were kids, like their parents gave them a shot of tequila when they were like when they had a cold or something.
Wow.
I'm sorry?
You know how they make like agave and like with honey, like some form of honey?
Agave nectar?
I don't know, dude.
That one right there?
Sure.
Yeah, like a sugar alternative.
Yes, the blue nectar.
Oh, okay. So it's the same
You
thing.
put that in a distillery. You put that in a like a still pot. Add some yeast. Put it at like a high temperature. That'll become tequila.
What do you what is like you do?
That's the last time.
Okay, so figure out. All right, so figure out which is which on in your cups.
How do you know which one?
I have to explain the fucking. Okay, so put them side by side. Obviously, I wish we had clear cups, but this is okay too. Take a look at the color. One looks like pee, one doesn't. Go ahead and smell, drink side by side, whatever it is, and let me know what you think between the two. Up to you, up to you. I want you guys to be able to taste this, and then figure out what's like the biggest difference in between the two.
You guys are taking like a shot. Let's spoil it right now. Dude,
Interesting thing.
Did you say that everybody sits down?
My neighbor did. He took sips.
I like the one that
Oh, that's the same.
It tastes the same.
I can't tell the difference.
Clearly you didn't savor it. What?
Sabrina, that's a guess.
Wait, guess what? What is she guessing?
I'm sorry?
This is an observation.
What's your observation?
Wait, what's the second one?
The darker one burns longer, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So that attributes, for one, to the oak. And the thing is with liquor, when people are drinking, like, especially like finer spirits and everything, like, let's say, for example, like a Four Roses bourbon, which you guys probably never heard of, but when it's aged really long, chances are the finish is going to be longer. Normally when people, especially, this is like a marketing like strategy for like most distillers. They want a finish that's longer so that someone who actually appreciates like the liquor, not saying you guys don't.
You're not wrong.
Actually, what you
You're not
said,
wrong.
but okay. Keep moving.
Wait, can we reuse the cups or should I collect them all?
You guys can if you choose to, but then again, I wouldn't know who the hell is who.
just it's okay. Wesley, just use the new cup.
Okay.
Yeah, just dispose to it. Yeah, it's so hard to keep track of it.
Where's only one cup?
You guys can toss them in this. Just play basketball. Next slide, please. I have that bottle at home. I wasn't gonna bring it for you guys though.
So are those expensive?
This can get pretty expensive. Depends where you go. I got mine at Costco for like 120.
Why did you bring it?
Oh.
What do you mean? Why didn't I bring it? Cause
So
you're gonna
selfish.
drink it.
How about the one that we just drink?
You could get a bottle like this for about 32, 33,
Mm-hmm.
and then this would probably go a little less than 40.
Okay.
So you're the cheap stuff.
I give you
The bottom
Oh,
shelf.
geez.
How long was it? Is it like actual 1942, like for real?
No, okay, so if I had the bottle, I'd explain it to you guys. But 1942 Don Julio, that's tequila that's aged for 2.5 years. And it's called 1942 because it's supposed to be like a memorial to the man himself, Don Julio, who started making tequila in 1942.
Oh, I see.
So that's all it is. I really enjoy that tequila. However, I enjoy this a bit more. It doesn't look as cool, but I mean, marketing makes you want to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
The color on this, though, however, it's aged just about the same as Don Julio 1942. I like Casa Noble a little bit better. This is an añejo tequila. So añejo tequilas are easily the most expensive type of tequila you can get. Casa Noble, I like it because it's lowland. It's from like the lower regions in Mexico, not produced too high with the agave plants. And it's in a really warm climate wherever they keep their distillery at. So it calls for like a really sweet, at least what I notice. I don't know if you guys will, because your palates are not there yet.
Damn.
But yeah, what I get out of this is seriously vanilla Coke. That's what I get out of it. So give it a. I mean, obviously it's gonna burn a little bit more than vanilla Coke because ethanol is in this. But I'm just gonna pour it.
Just pour it. Raise your hand.
Just
raise your hand.
Nah, chill, I'm
Just
kidding.
raise your hand.
If it burns, I don't want
Just stick your tongue in the cup.
it.
This is small or strong?
Veo saidia.
Smoothie.
Society.
Society. Okay.
Saidia.
Let me pour you one. Let me pour you one. Let me pour.
Xie
Shit, shit.
Dude, vote it. Just taste it and spit it out.
Oh, shit. Are you gonna drink it out?
Spit it to our mouth.
You gonna burn, I gotta last the rest of the show.
So typically with añejo tequilas, as they're being passed around, typically with añejo tequilas, you don't mix them with anything. It's supposed to be like a nicer tequila. It's like a nice sipper. Whenever I'm behind a bar and a customer asks, can I get like a margarita with an añejo tequila, I judge them in the back of my head. But I'm still going to make it for them anyway.
Why do you judge them?
Because I just judge the hell out of people on their orders. I'm just kidding. I mean, at the end of the day, no matter like how big like peer pressure you have on like, oh, I should order this drink this way. The best drink at the end of the day is whatever you like to drink and how you like to drink it. If you want to drink like a Cosmopolitan, like in like one of these glasses, go for it.
Like really pink drink. I would know.
So with the Casa Noble tequila, obviously for one, if you with my description of vanilla Coke, you guys must be having your hopes really high, saying it's not gonna have a burn. All alcohol has some sort of burn because of ethanol and the fermenting process and the distillation process. However, on the nose and on the palate, it's definitely a lot more sweet than something that hasn't been aged at all or something that's been aged for less than a year. This goes for 2.5 years, so there's something like that. Now, I'm sorry, go back to the previous slide. I think I forgot to go over this. So to be considered a reposado tequila, it can't be any more. It has to be a minimum of 3 months, but no more than a year. To be considered an añejo tequila, it has to be a minimum of 1 year, but no more than 3. There are tequilas that go on even to 6, but at that point, on the nose of these tequilas, you're probably, I hope you're smelling like some sweet notes, especially on the palate. However, once you get past like year 4 or year 5, maybe even 6, you're not going to taste any sweetness at all because, like I mentioned, these are rested in oak barrels. Very similar to like whiskey. These guys are rested always in oak barrels. The tequila will end up looking like this, number 1, and it will end up smelling like whiskey. That way you will lose pretty much all of the agave sweet notes. But some people actually like that. I don't have any examples of it. I don't carry any extra añejo tequilas. But yeah, next slide, please. So, how many years for an añejo?
6 and a half. Whoa.
Anywhere between a year and 3 years.
Trick question.
How many months for this?
3.
3 till
1 year.
1 month.
No, 11 months and 29 days.
Yeah.
Right before next month.
And what about this?
Less
Less than 3 months.
3 months, 1 hour.
1 hour.
Damn it, I know.
1 hour. I mean, you're not wrong, I guess. Next slide, please.
You're not greedy. It's okay.
let's move on to vodka.
Oh,
I'm not gonna pour out any vodka because, for sake of time, and I don't really like vodka, but vodka is easily the second most ordered spirit in the United States, and probably next to tequila. There's many different types of vodka. You have you have some vodka infused with certain flavors. Absolute Citron, that's my lemon vodka. Tito's, it's my, I guess, normal vodka. As you can see, I don't drink very much of it, nor do I do for anything else. But to give you an idea, you're going to think about it this way. So at work, I was giving this lesson in this class over here. I did a blind taste test between Grey Goose, whatever was in my well, I think it's Svedka, and Tito's. And everyone's always going to be like, oh, Grey Goose is the best, this and that. I mean, for one, it really depends on your palate, but everyone that I was giving the training to chose Svedka over Grey Goose. And the reason being is because of what it's made of. What is vodka made out of?
Wheat.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Correct. Vodka could literally be made out of anything as long as you could extract the sugar. So Grey Goose over here, it's a French vodka. It's made out of wheat. Next slide, please. Hello.
Which kind of goose? Great.
So the thing is with vodka, they pretty much do the same thing as they do tequila. They'll harvest whatever grain they're using. For Grey Goose, it's wheat. For Tito's, it's actually corn. For Absolute, it's rye. For Kettle One, it's rye as well. Ciroc is grapes. So for someone with an untrained palate, they're probably not going to figure it out. I haven't figured it out. I hate vodka. I don't drink enough of it to know. But there are some vodka connoisseurs, sommeliers, those actually exist, who can actually tell the difference between vodka. Very small population of the industry does it, but with Ciroc, obviously it's distilled from grapes, so it's going to be sweeter on the nose. Same thing with Tito's. Not so much with Grey Goose. The thing is with Grey Goose, they say, oh, it's been filtered X amount of times, which is what people go for, but really, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Anyways, let's go ahead and talk about the process. They'll put all the sugars that they've extracted from whatever grain it is, wheat, corn, barley, rye, potatoes. Chopin 80 is a potato vodka. And they'll cook it down until they get something like this, something that looks like oatmeal. Next slide, please.
Oatmeal is pretty good.
At the end of the day, it's put into copper column stills or stainless steel column stills like you saw in the previous slide with tequila. Like I mentioned before, making alcohol is practically the same way, just starts off with something different. Whether it's agave, but in this case, vodka, you can make literally anything out of it. Next slide, please. After that, it's bottled, ready to go. You don't have to age it at all. Ciroc is made from grapes, Kettle One's rye, Tito's is corn. Again, to the naked palate, you won't have any idea which is which, but to some connoisseurs, they will tell the difference. Ciroc is sweeter on the nose, Kettle One is spicier, Tito's is sweeter. Because Tito's is made out of corn, and it's not aged at all, you age it for a minimum of 3 months and it becomes a bourbon, actually. Bourbon is 51% corn, so that's pretty much all it is. As long as you follow all those steps before you bottle it, you have to put it in a barrel, it'll end up becoming a bourbon. I'll get into whiskey in a little bit. Does anyone? No, I'm not gonna have you guys drink. Next. I think there's a new PowerPoint.
Did you share another one with me?
I shared multiple.
That one's called fighting cock. That one's literally called fighting cock.
Whiskey? Basically, right?
Yeah, look,
These-
it's fighting cock.
Yeah, we can do this.
Wait, it's not. It's fine. Why? I don't know if it was good.
How many times have you done that?
That's actually the first time. I've never had to put alcohol back into a bottle.
All together. What are you doing?
What's that?
No help, Sarah. Where's the first time I've seen it?
It's for the boys out here.
Let's do whiskey.
I just asked for the boys.
And you got like 7 of it?
That's a lot.
Actually, no, pass one over here.
Pass them all back.
I just sold one.
The boys.
I'll explain.
Oh,
What?
I will explain.
we don't need that many.
Checking the recording.
Alright, everyone has their Coke backs, chasers, whatever.
I don't know if it's right.
Sweet one. You
Hi.
Can you pass me one?
This is probably gonna be my last PowerPoint, so I can get into cocktails, and so you guys can actually try it. Whiskey is super big. This is probably why it's gonna be my last PowerPoint, because it's a little longer. So who knows what whiskey is? What? Can you tell me what you know about whiskey so far?
It's an alcohol.
It's disgusting. I think it's okay.
So whiskey, pretty much at the end of the day, like I mentioned, is before it's aged, is practically vodka, with the exception of Ciroc, which is great. And I'll explain why. Whiskey is pretty much any aged spirit made with cereal grain. So rye, corn, wheat, barley, all that stuff. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So number one, you'll harvest the grain, whether it's corn, rye, barley, wheat. So these two whiskeys over here, on the left and right, they're considered Kentucky straight bourbons. The mash bill is mash bill. Think of it as like a recipe. What goes into that little big pot, column still, 51% of that at least is corn. Now, how whiskey brands and distillers differentiate from each other is either adding more corn or less corn to make it either sweeter or not as sweet. Fermentation, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. Once you harvest the grain, you put it in like a big pot. You'll extract all the sugars, you put yeast on it. Keep it at a high temperature for 1 to 3 days, you know, all this stuff. You distill it, you filter it, you rest and age in barrels. And that's the biggest difference between vodka and whiskey, is just how long it rests. Once you finish, you bottle and then you drink it. Next slide, please.
So usually for whiskey, how long it take?
It depends. All different whiskeys have their own rules. To start off, bourbon whiskey. With bourbon whiskey, it has to be made in the United States. In terms of like alcohol regulation, the United States next to Mexico is the strictest, believe it or not. Not with what you can put inside of it, but what you can call it. So you can't call it a bourbon whiskey and sell it in the United States unless, one, it's 51% corn, made in the United States and aged for at least 3 months. At the very least 3 months. These are Kentucky straight whiskeys, so it's been more than 3 years. This has been aged 6 years. This has been aged, I think, 6 years or 10 years. I'll get into this later because this is a rye whiskey. First off, I want to gauge the room. Does anyone actually want to drink whiskey? Or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. 7. So the biggest difference between I'll pour you guys the nice one because there's not so much.
What makes that one nice?
Age longer.
Age longer?
10 years, yeah.
Are you an expert, Crystal?
He just said that for
Why is it aging cold? Because of monitoring again?
Oh, what makes that 10-year whiskey?
Why is it so nice though? Like, what is that more age? Oh,
They just like
it's like aging cheese.
that they can hold it in a nice glass and be like, I'm fancy.
Just because you don't like it.
I think
You
so.
know, exactly.
Snap it back in position.
You guys sure? Yeah, I think so.
You don't want anything?
Fuck off.
Yeah.
We can go to court for our first one yet.
Oh
I am
my God.
21.
You are 21.
This muscle.
So go ahead, drink as you please. This is actually one of my favorite whiskeys to open. This is my actually second bottle. I'm only on my first bottle of all these, but this is my second bottle of Four Roses bourbon. I really enjoyed this bourbon. Fun facts about this particular bourbon itself. Four Roses is a distillery that makes a variety of different bourbons. You guys can pass this around or something.
And then God.
There's 6 different whiskeys that go into that one bottle. So Four Roses has 6 different recipes, and they make 6 different kinds of whiskey, or more than 6, but they just happen to put 6 into that one bottle, and it just somehow works. You'll get notes of mint from their OBSV recipe. You'll get notes of peach from their OBSY recipe. I'm not talking English probably, but the biggest difference between bourbon whiskey and rye whiskey is the fact that, again, the mash bill, so the recipe, 51% corn, so therefore it's more sweet than the rye. Just some examples over there. Next slide, please. Rye whiskey. Can anyone guess what rye whiskey's mash bill is? How much? Correct. So rye whiskey, by law in the United States, has to be made, number 1, made in the United States, and number 2, has to be made with 51% rye, and number 3, has to be aged a minimum of 3 months. These are probably the 2 most popular ones on the market when it comes to rye whiskey. You guys don't want fighting cock. Because it's 103 proof.
Oh, we definitely want it.
Have you guys heard of Wild Turkey 101?
Yeah.
Or any of that? Heaven Hill Distilleries made that just to literally fight against Wild Turkey, which is why it's called fighting cock.
Oh.
Everclear is disgusting. But I have it. I use it to make my bitters. I make my own bitters. Because I'm a nerd. I'll get into that. Alright, in terms of rye whiskey, rye, 51% rye, aged 3 months. You guys got it right. You guys are smart as hell. Rye whiskey, the biggest difference between rye whiskey and bourbon whiskey is it's spicier, it's more earthy. That's all it is. Do you guys know what old fashions are or Manhattans are?
Yeah.
I've heard of them. Not really.
So they're easily the most popular cocktails ordered when it comes to whiskey. Would anyone? So I'm gonna go ahead and pour out the rye whiskey. For those who tried the bourbon, I want you guys to taste and see and feel the difference in everything.
Just a sip. I think just a sip, that's too much.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah, too much. Yeah.
Four. The way you like.
What's the other 49%?
Huh? It could be literally anything. It depends on the distiller.
How does no say?
The recipe is on that little tag on the top. And if it doesn't give you enough, just go to their website. It really depends on the distiller.
There's a really little that one.
You sound drunk.
Double percent.
You're slurring, right?
Oh, that's this is
No, I just not say that's like rubbing alcohol does go like
You missed it. We're gonna get some. I don't know if you can see it.
No, I just want to say you use it as rubbing alcohol too.
So if you already drank it or anything like that,
Crystal's such a savage.
the biggest difference, at least I hope you notice, is the fact that the rye whiskey is spicier. The burn is definitely harsher. And it's not as soft as the corn. So thank corn.
What is so smoother?
version, it feels smoother than the bourbon. But what I noticed, this is what at the end of the day, drinks are subjective. But this is what I notice, and this is what like most people who drink this stuff notice. And these are the characteristics you're supposed to have. So I'm just going over it. Anyways, next slide, please. I don't have any of that. Next slide, please. I don't bring any of that. Next slide, please.
What's Jameson? What's
Jameson's actually a terrible Irish whiskey. Scotch. I don't have any Scotch over here, but I feel like this is the biggest thing that most people get confused of. So when people order Scotch, they think it's like a thing on its own. It is, but it's also considered like a whiskey. Think about it this way: every Toyota is a car, but not every car is a Toyota. Just how every Scotch is a whiskey, but not every whiskey is a Scotch. Now, to be considered a Scotch by law, it has to be made in Scotland. It has to be made it has to be aged at least 3 years, and it has to be made with all barley. I wish I had like an example over here for you. Almost always all barley. Some Scotches will break the rules, but traditionally it will almost always be all barley, if not like 91%. But there's that. Different regions of Scotland produce different types of different types of Scotch. The Speyside region in Scotland is easily the most popular. I mean, if you guys ever heard of Macallan or Glenlivet or I think Johnny Walker's up in Speyside too. Those guys are pretty much that region. They specifically specialize in those type of whiskeys. All the Scotch that comes out of Speyside, Scotland, have like a similar characteristic of, honey or like sweeter than most. Has anyone heard of Lafroig? Or like Lagavulin or Oban? Yeah, okay, cool. So if you've heard of Lafroig, or if you ever have the chance to try it, Lafroig is actually an Islay Scotch. So Speyside is all the way at the top. Islay is an island called Islay. Lafroig is, in my opinion, I mean, you can drink it if you want. Some people like it. But Lafroig tastes like leather to me. And that's super far off. I kid you not. It's super peaty. It tastes like leather. But it's what makes the different regions in Scotland different. I mean, it gives it its own characteristic. Kind of like how back to the Mapa in Mexico, like those states produce different types of tequila, different characteristics, all that stuff. I didn't bring a bottle of Scotch. I should have. Oh well.
Next time.
Next slide, please. Okay, that's the end of it. So the easiest way to get into whiskey is actually mixing it. Has anyone heard of a whiskey sour? Super easy to make. When you go to a bar, what do you see your bartender do to make a whiskey sour?
Take my card.
Do they have a gun? Do they like put the gun into the thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's I guess one way to make a whiskey sour. But I think that's like a terrible way to make a whiskey sour, and I'll tell you why. The thing that comes out the gun is filled with like sugar, artificial coloring, and all that stuff. You can easily make a whiskey sour at home with just 3 ingredients: lemon juice, simple syrup, which is just sugar, and whiskey, of course. You can easily fresh squeeze your lemon juice. I squeezed this morning, even though it doesn't look like it. I promise you I did. It's all the pulp. Simple syrup is easy to make too. If you're making simple syrup at home, all you have to do is just do a 1-to-1 ratio. So if you want, you do 1 cup of sugar to 1 cup of water, and you just boil it, and you just stir it until it becomes clear. Normally whiskey sours are served with an egg white. However, I feel like that's a little bit too much, and I will just stick without an egg white. Whiskey sours are normally served in a traditional cocktail glass. However, you might have seen it in bars in like a regular glass like that. And I think it's kind of an insult. How I got into whiskey was because of this drink, the whiskey sour. So what you do, where the hell's, here it is. So if you guys care to take down the recipe, you don't have to. You can pretend to.
One.
Can you move the?
Only the small one.
Post it on the event page.
So 3/4 of an ounce of lemon juice, freshly squeezed.
How do you measure this?
I'll explain with this jigger in a little bit.
Ah, I see.
3/4 an ounce of sugar, simple syrup. And then you're gonna do, it depends on your taste. I'm gonna go 1.5. I'm gonna go a little lighter on the whiskey. And then it's 1.5 ounces of the whiskey of your choice.
With one shot.
Oh, you have a shot. That's about it.
You guys ice it?
Oh, okay. What a real chef, what a real chef. Tasting his drink, you like that shit.
And you normally garnish it with like a really nice cherry. I'm not talking those like neon red cherries. Those are made with like formaldehyde and not good for you. I'm talking like the Gasardo cherries. The black ones kept, yeah, you're probably eating too much of it. So Luxardo cherries, I wish I had a picture of it, but Luxardo cherries, if you've seen them at like fancier bars, they're black cherries kept in like a natural syrup. Those are Sicilian cherries, and those are no artificial coloring, no artificial sweetener. That's all straight up Sicilian cherries kept in its own sugar. And that's what it's normally garnished with. The reason why I made this cocktail the way it is with the recipe is because there's normally room for egg white, which is why the wash line on the cocktail glass is pretty low. The reason why you would add an egg white, at least to a traditional sour, number one, protein, but number two, and the most important one, it gives it a nice foam. So if you've ever drank beer and you like,
It's not the right color, but is that okay?
thanks for trying though.
Oh, we think it's cherry.
The reason why you would add an egg white to like a sour drink is because it's traditional. The sour was started in like, I think, the end of Prohibition, when distilleries were just getting back in business, and all the whiskey and all the spirits kind of just sucked. So they added, fruit juice to it in order to make it taste better. A sour drink, you can make anything out of a sour. You can make a whiskey sour. Anyone know what a lemon drop martini is? That's pretty much just vodka sour. If I put vodka in that instead of whiskey, it would just be a lemon drop. Hopefully there's enough for everybody.
Yeah.
If anything, I'll just make another. No big deal. But sour drinks, to be considered a sour drink, it's just literally the spirit, lemon juice, and some sort of sweetener. So think about it like a lemonade. That's literally what a sour is.
No, we have a lot of It's by the stairs now.
Oh, okay. Burns
I just,
Okay.
I can get it.
Why don't we just use the foam cups?
No, we still have.
Did you want the big?
The foam is super popular there. It's like super nice.
There's more than enough.
What are the top mixed drinks?
Getting it?
Me too, I want to try.
So Sarah's question was, what are the top mixed drinks people get? It depends on where you are. However, in America, by statistic, it's the margarita. However, where I'm at, it's a caipirinha. And that's exactly. I don't have that here with me. That's another alcohol for another day.
Can you just tell us what it is?
The caipirinha is a national cocktail of Brazil, because I work at a Brazilian steakhouse.
Question. How come I've never seen you at Bogo?
Do you go to the bar?
Yeah. It's at the bar.
That's a damn lie.
Yo,
Do you work
they
every
do
day?
the cold,
I think we're good.
what is it? Those like cheese puff things.
I think we're good.
Wait, what?
Complimentary
No, but you don't understand. Like you said, right? Alcohol.
Oh, those are good.
It was cold.
You're probably fine.
You guys got it?
Well, my bartenders are giving you terrible cheese. I'll fire one of them. Who was it?
It was a girl and a guy.
It was a girl and a guy. Was the girl short?
Yeah.
Latina?
Asian.
Oh, she's gone.
She's
Oh.
gone.
Man, you really want her gone?
No, she's already gone.
Alright, it's not my fault then.
Damn, Crystal.
Where you went?
So what are okay? So
To visit him?
for those people who had the whiskey, the whiskey's in this, but with lemon juice and lime, or lemon juice and sugar. Obviously, it's a bit softer and easier to take down. That's a sour. That's it. That's what a sour should taste like, at least. If you go to a bar, I mean, it depends. You can't really. It depends on what bar you go to. You're not gonna go to like One Up Bar on Noriega and ask for like a super nice cocktail. Like they're just not gonna do it, and they probably won't even know what it is. But you order it based on like your surrounding. If I'm at like a draft house or like a place that specializes in beer, I'm not gonna ask for like a vodka soda. I'm not gonna. You know what I mean? It's like you go to McDonald's and you ask for a salad. That's like not. That's nothing. Hey, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just you probably shouldn't. You know what I mean?
High cholesterol, man.
Why are you even at McDonald's?
So that's a sour in terms of whiskey. The last whiskey cocktail I will do, old fashioned. Has anyone ever heard of that?
Yeah.
For the people who have abstained from drinking the whiskey by itself, you're probably going to want to abstain from this as well.
Since you're not gonna make a Manhattan, we'll do a Manhattan.
Oh, I could do a Manhattan too.
Do that one. Yeah, do it.
Do you want me to rinse that?
All right, give me like 5 minutes. We'll take a nice intermission. I'm gonna give you guys a choice of the last 1, 2. I can either do a Manhattan, an old fashioned, or a mojito.
Mojitos. I know what that tastes like.
I can teach you how to make one. Because there's a proper way to make one. So first we'll start with the Manhattan since I'm already here, and then we'll end with a mojito. Is that cool with everybody?
Yeah.
So a Manhattan. A Manhattan is another whiskey cocktail, very popular in the whiskey community. And it is what it is. So the area code of Manhattan, can anyone guess what it is? It's 212. Good job. So that's the way I remembered how to make my Manhattans. 212. 2 ounces of the booze. Damn it. 2 ounces of the booze. 1 ounce of something called vermouth. And 2 dashes of bitters. So, you already know what the whiskey is. Vermouth, I didn't go over. Vermouth is pretty much fortified wine. There's red vermouth and dry vermouth. These two, this one would go in like a martini. This one would go in stuff like Manhattans, Negronis, all that stuff. There's many different brands, however, I enjoy these 2 brands.
What are fortified wines?
So, fortified wines are pretty much just wines already, but they cook it down and add sugar to them pretty much. So, it's softer, it's not as... I guess like not too much of a bite. The red vermouth, this starts off with a red wine and then they add sugar to it. The dry vermouth is pretty much a white wine. They add a little bit of sugar to it, but it's not going to be as sweet as the red vermouth. But for the purpose of the Manhattan, this is what goes in a Manhattan. And the biggest difference between a Manhattan and the whiskey sour is the whiskey sour there's fruit juice in there. And that totally changes how you should make the drink. If there's fruit juice, any sort of syrup, that's when a bartender or you should be shaking the cocktail. However, if the base ingredients are just booze, you should be stirring it. James Bond shaken martinis, yeah, that's not a thing. That's only popular because James Bond started doing it. Martinis are also traditionally made with Bombay Sapphire, or I'm sorry, any sort of gin, and they actually put vermouth in here. However, most people nowadays, when they order martinis, want a vodka martini shaken dry. When a customer says dry, they pretty much mean they don't want any of this. So in a sense, all they want is chilled vodka in a cocktail glass, which is not a cocktail at all. It's just really cold and really watered down. A dirty martini is another thing. When you make a martini dirty, is when you add olive juice to it. Some people like that. Some people like savory cocktails. That's just to appeal to the savory person. There's a cocktail called a Gibson. It's pretty much exactly like a martini, but instead of olives, they put onions. which is pretty disgusting. But I mean, again, drink what you like to drink. So let's go ahead and do a Manhattan.
Concoction, dude. Like, I'm gonna drink this with olive juice. That's what I want.
This?
No, I'm just saying, like, people thought about putting olive juice in that drink. Like, that just sounds crazy to me.
I guess there's like a science behind it. Olives taste more bitter.
Like
They
you never
match
had
well.
pickle juice for fun?
No.
What?
No.
What? Hold up.
No.
Like how people put pickle juice with Kool-Aid.
Wait, what?
It's like a thing.
That's a thing.
Wait, you didn't explain what the jiggamerg is.
I'll pass it around once I'm finished. But the jigger is like a bartender's best friend, like how a chef is to a knife. A jigger is to a bartender. It just helps measure out, ingredients to put into a cocktail. That way, the cocktail won't be as sour, as sweet, or as strong. Because the big thing when you're making cocktails at home is people always like, oh, I want a really strong drink. No, what's the fun in having a really strong drink when you should really be enjoying the symphony of ingredients that come together. What was I? Oh, bitters. Bitters is just bitter. Think about it like salt for cocktails. It adds like another dimension to the cocktail. Guess we could pass around one, give it a sniff. It's made with an overproof spirit, and it normally rests in like some sort of barrel or some sort of steel thing. And you could add anything you want to it. You've probably heard. There are certain bitters. This is easily the Coca-Cola brand of bitters. Like every bar will have it. There's orange bitters. There's cherry bitters. There's lemon ginger bitters. You could easily make it at home. All you have to do is get something like an overproof spirit, like Everclear. That's what I have it for. And what I did was made lemon ginger bitters at home. I just let lemon and ginger sit in it for like 3 months minimum. You shake it like every week or so, and at the end of it, you'll have like a nice bitter to add to your cocktail.
What do you do with all this alcohol at home?
I stare at it sometimes.
Nice.
Sometimes I'll have like family over, or sometimes I'll have like coworkers over, and after like a long shift, especially if you're in the industry, sometimes you just want to drink. What? I haven't seen you guys. Oh, you guys. I haven't seen you in like 2 weeks.
Really?
That's funny.
This particular bitters, the base of it is like a rum. Yeah, the base of it is a rum, and most Angostura aromatic bitters, they'll put cinnamon in there, they'll put cardamom, rosemary, pretty much anything to add to the cocktail.
Very cinnamony, yeah.
It's actually really cheap alcohol.
Oh, really? Yeah, I see it. I smell it. I smell it.
Yeah.
没有问题，大家。
A little bit.
People say it.
Oh no, I really won't.
Okay.
You can smell it.
You can smell it, don't drink it.
So bitters are alcohol.
Bitters are alcohol, yes. This is also a pretty good remedy for like a stomach ache or like nausea. That's why a common thing is like soda water and bitters, or ginger beer and bitters, or something like that. All you need is about 2 ounces, or 2 dashes rather. 2 ounces is way too much. Yeah, no, all you need is 2 drops. It makes that much of a difference. It's like salt. Now, like I mentioned, the biggest difference between this and the whiskey sour is the fact that you have to stir this. Why?
No juice.
There's no juice. There's no syrup. There's no anything. That's why the shaken martini is a lie. Don't ever order a shaken martini. Here's why. When you shake a cocktail, you aggravate the ice a lot more than as opposed to just stirring it. Stirring it is a less invasive way of incorporating all the ingredients together without melting the ice too much. So I ask this to people who want a shaken martini: how much water do you want in your drink? You know, you don't really want a watered down drink. Typical garnish is the cool cherry, but we don't have one. So
That's exactly what he said. He said a cool cherry.
this is probably my go-to at like a bar that looks like they know what they're doing.
Is that how you judge the bar?
Kinda.
Wait, what did you just make it up?
Man.
I forgot to, Sarah. I didn't want to ask.
Now, for those who had the whiskey, this is gonna be a lot. This is gonna be a lot softer than the whiskey by itself. The reason being is because of the Dolan vermouth, the red vermouth. Like I mentioned, it's a wine. So for you winos out there, you might actually like this because there's added sugar. Obviously, there's gonna be some heat to it, but not as much as the whiskey by itself.
This is like my boss's favorite drink.
What's your favorite cocktail?
Mine? I like amaretto sours.
Oh, nothing.
That's disgusting.
I like sour drinks. That's why.
Raise your hand if you want some.
We're good. How many more do we have? There's quite a bit.
Do you like more than no, those are sours. It doesn't burn it. But yeah, it doesn't burn as bad as true. I think after having like tequila.
Give it the whiskey.
Yeah, they're favorite. Alright then.
I like the sour.
Oh, there you go.
Not an alcohol.
You're not.
Not alcoholic. You know what Henry said before he came here? I think you like fun.
Yeah, are we good on time?
Another one?
Are we good on time?
The same one?
Are we okay on time?
Oh, it's okay.
Perfect, dude. Are we missing anything?
No, I think that's it. Are you gonna make another drink or?
I think I'm gonna do. We got time for one more, or do you want to just cut it? It's up to y'all.
You can extend it.
It's really up to you. Are you
I mean,
tired yet?
it's up to the host, really. I don't want to.
That's plenty of time.
Okay. As promised, I will do a mojito the proper way.
Okay, Wesley?
I'm good.
He's I'm good.
Do we have? Do another intermission. Sorry.
Wesley, tell some
Sugar.
jokes. Wesley, tell some
Wait, like brown sugar or baking sugar or what?
Sugar, I was gonna do.
I'm working on it.
an
I'm
old
working on it.
fashioned.
It's good.
Wesley, can I get one of the cups?
What cups? These cups?
You want to share the Jeffrey, what's like the most common cocktail that people order?
I thought you said the Brazilian one.
Well, aside from that,
Margarita.
Moscow mules are pretty popular. I don't know. I can't really. They're all pretty like easy. I don't know. Moscow mules, Manhattans, martinis,
Wait, when
old
did you
fashioned.
start bartending again?
Been doing this for a little over. A little over a year now. So as soon as I graduated and I moved back here, I was like the first thing I did.
What about well drinks? Like what's the most popular one?
Tequila.
Tequila or vodka soda?
Vodka soda.
Your beers are good.
Easily.
Your beers are good.
Huh?
Your beers are
Did you
good.
go there for happy hour?
Yeah, I did.
It's cheap, especially for that area.
It is.
What's the kamikaze? Oh, that's
A kamikaze, I can make one right now, but a kamikaze is just vodka, lime juice, and something called like an orange liquor. So like something like triple sec.
Ooh.
I know they're just like party drinks, you know. All right, one last one, mojito. So a mojito is pretty much just alcoholic Sprite to me. That's all it is.
That's why I like it.
The thing is with mojitos, remember when I said if it has juice, you should shake it? This is the exception. Because whoever made the mojito, especially Cubans, they don't like shaking their mojitos. They insist that you build it in the glass. This is not a proper glass for a mojito. It has to be taller, but I didn't bring it. So all it is at the end of the day is just a couple mint leaves, some cane sugar.
That is a lot. Wow, that's a lot of sugar. Is that the one?
That's one drink.
And you'll see why.
It's known as a
Yeah, I think we need a lot of sugar. Yeah, vodka soda is 0 calories.
What is it actually? Control it.
When you make a mojito, you just want to muddle like the mint, but you don't want to like beat the crap out of it. Otherwise, if you beat the hell out of the mint, it becomes bitter. So just lightly press it, and then you get lime juice, freshly squeezed lime juice. I don't like using like store-bought lime juice or anything like that. And you just build it in the glass. It's a really messy drink, but it's very delicious, refreshing. Tastes like Sprite.
yeah.
Just get enough out of the mint. And then you get a nice quality rum. Bacardi is probably like a rum that you guys probably recognize, but I don't have Bacardi. This is a nice Puerto Rican rum. It's called Havana Club, but it's made by Bacardi. But they stole the recipe from like the original Havana Club, which is a really nice, very nice rum. Now with rum, it could be just about anything. Rum is made from distilling molasses, which is a byproduct of sugarcane. And what you want to do is, while you build it in the glass and you put the booze in, you just kind of want to lift up the mint and pretty much dissolve the cane sugar at the bottom. This is like the proper and like traditional way to make mojito. You go to anywhere in the Caribbean, especially Cuba, they pride themselves in doing something like this. No shaking done, fresh mint, just stirring very nicely, and that's all it is. Looks very messy, but that's what a mojito is supposed to be. Now, a brief thing on rum. Rum, again, is made from distilling molasses. It could be made in anywhere. That's a Puerto Rican rum. This is a Nicaraguan rum. This is a pineapple rum from Martinique. So it could be really, rum is really versatile. Yeah. We'll pour this one out and then we'll call it. And then I'll open it up for questions afterwards if you guys want informally. But other than that, I will be cleaning up.
Yeah, they good.